This is the first of a number of segments on evolution and adaptation, and I guess we might as well start with some bad news.
As a mother, I'm concerned about evolution being taught in school.
Mommy, man evolved from the apes.
Ooh, too much information. Tired of your kids coming home from school with a head full of so-called facts? Do what I did and call the Unlearning Annex. At the Unlearning Annex, your kids can unlearn dangerous, unproven theories like evolution, global warming, separation of church and state, tolerance, and space travel. Not to mention the myth that AIDS can be prevented by condoms.
If we came from monkeys, then how come there are still monkeys?
Now you're thinking? I mean, unthinking. Thanks, Unlearning Annex.
What's really sad are the number of people who actually believe in those various things. So the journal Nature, back in the year 2000, did this survey looking at U.S. secondary schools, and they decided to score them. They gave them grades of starting with A. And these are the number of states that earned each grade. So 10 got A's, only 10. 14 got B's, 7 got C's, and 6 got D's. A whopping 12 flunked. And there was one that was so horribly bad that they even decided to give it an F minus. F would have been too good for this state. Any guesses as to what that state might be? Okay, here it comes. Kansas. So at least, the majority kind of scored reasonably, as opposed to the ones at the D, F, and F minus range. But we have 50 states, and 19 of them are doing a miserable job of teaching evolution in secondary schools.
Everything started with the Big Bang. It was a Saturday night, and God and his roommate Chugs were arm wrestling.
You're going down, man! Oh, dude, that is sick!
Yeah, undefeated! Oh, wait, here comes another one. Quick, give me your lighter. You smell that?
Then, over millions of years, evolution took its course. Of course, I'm obligated by the state of Kansas to present the church's alternative to the theory of evolution.
Okay, well, that's a segue into talking about creationism. I'm not even going to dignify it by using the phrase creation science, because I think any respectable scientist would refer to that as an oxymoron. Oh, by the way, before I actually get into the creation stuff, let's look at what those states are. Happily, Connecticut earned an A, and many of you that are looking at this were schooled in Connecticut, so that's the good news. But you can see all of the darker states are the ones with the Fs. Of course, Kansas is the darkest with the F minus. So pretty dismal. Which now brings me to the Creation Museum, just to give you a sense of what's out there. The floor plan, as you can see here, we have Noah's Cafe, Biblical Authority, and let's see, all kinds of other weird things. Time Tunnel. The creation of Adam, and so on and so forth. Adam naming the animals. Wonder what he named them. And then on the lower level, we have Noah's Ark being constructed. More about that in just a moment. The flood geology room, etc. I'm not going to spend all that much time on this. And so they have things that are side by side: human reason, the evolution tree, and God's word. Creation orchard. Notice that the extreme discontinuity position where humans are off totally by themselves, and all of the non-human organisms are branching off over here. And then, oh my gosh, there's this. So this is something that is now under construction. It's Noah's Ark, and there's 3 different deck levels. If we just look a little bit at the first one, I'm not going to spend too much time, but just to give you an idea, they have different areas of deck 1 for different groups of animals. I don't know, the dimensions of those areas look awfully small to me. I'm not sure how you're going to fit all these animals in there. But nevertheless, that is what they intend to do. And what's really sad about this is they're getting $18 million in tax breaks. I mean, this is taxpayers' money in Kentucky that is paying for this 510-foot-long Ark replica. Let's look at this survey. 2002-2003, is evolution true? That's the question on the survey, and look where the United States ends up. All the way at the bottom. We are doing the worst job in teaching evolution. People don't believe it's true in this country. Following up, a couple of years later, 2005, same question. Well, at least Turkey beat us. Turkey is now last. They weren't in that last survey, by the way, but we are next to last, and all of these other countries are well above us. I'm very proud that Iceland is doing a good job. I'm not from Iceland, but nonetheless, it's good to see that some of those Scandinavian countries are really way up there, both Iceland and Denmark, along with Sweden as well. So what about U.S. teenagers between the ages of 13 and 17? So in 2005, they asked, what is your opinion of Darwin's theory of evolution? Is it well supported by evidence, not well supported by evidence, or you just don't know? Well supported by evidence, we have 37%. Not well supported, 30%. And then don't know, 33%, meaning they've just not been properly educated to give an intelligent opinion one way or the other here in the United States. And of course, there is a relationship, as you might very well expect, with one's educational level. The percent of adults who believe Darwin's theory is a scientific theory, well supported by evidence. People with postgraduate degrees come out on top in terms of percentage numbers here, percentage-wise. Then college graduates, and people that have had some college but didn't graduate college, high school graduates or non-graduates, but people that were in high school maybe at one point, come out at the bottom. So a definite relationship with one's education level. And then the most recent data that I have comes from 2014, a nationwide Gallup poll. It was done over the phone. Typically, that's how Gallup collects their data. And it involved 1,028 adults, again, from all parts of the country. And so here's what we're looking at. Again, we're dealing with percentages here. So human beings have developed over millions of years from less advanced forms of life, that's evolution, but God guided this process. Okay, so how many people believe in that? 31%. Next, human beings have developed over millions of years from less advanced forms of life, evolution, but God had no part in this process. And that comes down to 19%. And then God created human beings pretty much in their present form at one time within the last 10,000 years or so. It's very, very sad, 42%. No opinion. 8%. You know, there's really nothing wrong with that top one. You know, I should add, maybe I should have started out this way, so I'll just say it now. There's no necessary inconsistency with being religious and believing in evolution. And that's what this top choice actually portrays. Keeping science and one's belief system separate is fine. It's just that, you know, a belief system is not science. It's a belief system. It's fine to believe whatever you want to believe, but don't be fooled into thinking that that's science is the only problem. Look at this quote. There is grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers, having been originally breathed by the Creator into a few forms or into one. And that whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved. It's basically that top bar. So yes, there's a creator, evolution is in fact occurring, and the author of this quote happens to be Charles Darwin in the first edition of The Origin of Species. Okay, some people view this phenomenon, it's called industrial melanism, as Darwin's missing evidence. If only he knew. This came not too far after his death, which is really sad that he wasn't around to see this. So this is work that was done by Kettlewell over in the UK, and it involved what's called the peppered moth. It's one species of moth, but there's two color morphs. We have the light morph and we have the brown morph, or the dark morph. So here we have the Industrial Revolution occurring in England, right? So industry is starting to boom, late 1800s, early 1900s. Darwin's dead already. And what's happening, there's no pollution controls, of course. And so we have all of this soot being let loose into the atmosphere, and it's actually settling on trees and causing the trunks to darken. So here's a result of what was going on when all this was happening. So here we have the two moths. You can just barely make out the dark morph. I'll trace it out. It's right there. Right there. And the light one is standing out like a sore thumb. Birds like to eat moths, and so which one is going to have an adaptive advantage? Obviously, you know what the answer to that is. So now, look at the situation after the Industrial Revolution. Pollution controls start to take effect, and now it's the dark moth that is very, very conspicuous relative to the light moth. So obviously, a bird is going to go pecking is going to be eating that dark moth before it probably even notices that the light one is even there. So we look at data here, and during the Industrial Revolution, obviously more of the dark morphs of the moth are surviving than the light morphs because the trees are all blackened and everything, and so the dark moth has camouflage and the light one doesn't. And then we have a total reversal as the tree trunks start to lighten up a bit once pollution controls are in effect. So an adaptive advantage for each color morph depending on what's going on with the trees that they're resting on. Now don't be confused. The dark ones are not turning light, nor are the light ones turning dark. These are two coexisting morphs of the same species. We're just looking at relative adaptive advantages based upon where these moths happen to be sitting and the nature of the substrate on which they are, in fact, sitting.
50 years ago, this species was nearly all pale because that shade was the most effective camouflage. There are 3 moths here. The dark one, just below and left of center, is easiest to see. 50 years ago, if there were any dark ones at all, they made an easy mark for birds. Blue jays are omnivores, and moths form a part of their diet. So keen-eyed birds like this one have learned to spot conspicuous insects. But moths like this Panthea escaped detection, and so did their offspring, as long as the environment remained unchanged. But the environment did change. Throughout the 20th century, the soot of industrialism has been descending on city and country alike, slightly darkening the surfaces of many trees. Blue jays are adaptable generalists and learn quickly to uncover a failing camouflage. They are agents of natural selection. Combined with sudden environmental change, they help to perfect the defenses of their own prey. Camouflage is effective.
So you may have noticed he said throughout the 20th century. So yeah, I mean, industry is booming, and so things are getting bad again, even though there are pollution controls. There is increasing pollution, so there is a darkening of the trees once again. It's certainly not as bad as during the existing industrial revolution. So, we got to stay tuned and see what's going to happen here with the peppered moths. Probably the exact same thing. If the trees get darker and darker, then the dark morph will have an advantage and the light morph will be the one that's eaten. So there you go. That's our introduction to evolution and adaptation.